The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, our nation faces a dire fiscal situation. We've reached our debt limit, we've lifted our debt limit, and we're now determining how to control our spending while still funding necessary programs. What's worse, too many of our federal regulations and mandates that we fund, or maybe more appropriately the taxpayers fund, are unnecessary and exact burdensome and excessive costs on our constituents, both families and businesses. The reality is we can and we must make cuts to our government before financial markets make them for us. We can do that without impacting essential programs if we make the right targeted cuts. If we make those cuts, we can actually grow our economy by stopping overeager bureaucrats who seem to believe that everything, and I do mean everything, should be regulated until it no longer functions. Not only is such action possible, it's essential for the well-being of the American economy and our families. We in Congress need to be focused on growing and protecting Main Street, not protecting an already bloated federal government. The amendment I proposed today makes a cut to the bureaucracy and several components of the financial services. These cuts are a modest 10% reduction of administrative expenses, which would save taxpayers over $596 million annually. Let me repeat that. That's over $500 million a year. We put it up together, it's real money. One of the cuts included in the amendment is to the IRS. My amendment does not target IRS services, those that help taxpayers get a lost refund or have questions about filing. Lord knows those people need all the help they can get to understand our tax code. Rather, the amendment focuses on IRS enforcement. This is the part of the IRS that abuse their power by targeting groups based on their political beliefs, victimizing groups and individuals for exercising their constitutional rights and trying to follow the rule of law. They misled Americans and took 3 years to provide a full list of organizations that were targeted for their political beliefs. This is an agency that must be stopped, and my amendment is a step towards doing so while saving the American taxpayers money. I urge my colleagues to seriously consider my amendment as we work to secure our financial future and hold our government accountable. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Does the gentleman from Illinois rise in opposition?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, this type of amendment bluntly imposes cuts to government function without regard to merit or consequence. Indiscriminate cuts to the administration accounts in this bill would lead to weakened cybersecurity and increased threat of cyber attacks to the Department of Treasury systems, poor administration of grants to small businesses, longer wait times for citizens seeking assistance from federal agencies, longer processing times for issuing federal payments, reducing the ability of the IRS to detect and deter tax cheats, costly short-term spending decisions, widespread delays in civil and bankruptcy cases, just as a few examples. The underlying bill is already dangerously underfunded, having been cut by 6% below current levels. Furthermore, the administrative accounts were a large source of this reduction to total funding, and this amendment blindly strips nearly $600 million more out of these offices. This amendment would not encourage the agency to do more with less. Simply put, it would force the agencies and our constituents to do less with less. I strongly urge members to oppose this amendment and reserve the time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
I'll yield 1 minute of my time to my colleague and the chair of the subcommittee. Thank you.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I know Mr. Quigley and I and our team have worked hard on this bill, and there's a lot of tough decisions, no doubt about that. We've made some tremendously difficult decisions, and I know Mr. Mitchell was sitting here with a mission from his constituency, and that was to produce savings, to find savings, and to reduce the debt and the deficit. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I applaud his efforts, and I know he sharpened his pencil, and he's done a lot of work, and I appreciate him bringing this concept before the House.
Gentleman from Michigan.
Reserve?
Gentleman from Michigan reserves.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Just across the board cuts are an abdication of responsibility. It is up to us as appropriators to determine exactly what needs funding and to what levels. And for those reasons, I ask my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman, Michigan.
Mr. Chair, I have to say I'm astonished with the response that an across-the-board cut is indiscriminate. It actually allows the agencies within their administrative accounts to manage money as they best see fit. The idea that we can't cut 10% of the budget only works in government. I spent a big part of my career in the private sector, over 30 years. Spent quite a period of time with Chrysler Corporation in the original loan guarantee days, where Lee Iacocca said, if you can't cut 10% of your budget, I'll find a new manager. We saved the company. It happens in the real world every day. Lord knows it happened after 2008 in the financial crash. Yet somehow we're looking at government agencies and they can't save 10% of administrative costs. It's not possible to do without Armageddon in financial services, without a security crash, without all the fear and mongering that comes over a simple cut. If we're ever going to get to the point that we can afford the government we have to have some fiscal limitations. We have to have some responsibility. And this broad strokes of it's indiscriminate, if we targeted that would be a problem too. I urge my colleagues to support an amendment that holds some accountability and saves $500 million in the federal budget and makes people simply manage within resources like the rest of the world has to. I appreciate the time, and I will yield back.
All time expired. That questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan, excuse me. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Independent chair, the ayes have it. From Illinois.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6, Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Michigan will be postponed.